A single spotlight glared down onto the circular platform, its edges disappearing into the abyss below. The silence in the Grand Hall of Sentience was deafening. Every breath, every mechanical whir, every subtle shift in weight echoed like thunder. At the center, bound by thick alloyed manacles that connected to the floor through humming gravlocks, stood Commander Elias Vorn, Envoy of Earth. Before him rose the towering figures of the Galactic Council, arranged in a vast arc. Some shimmered with bioluminescent skin. Others bore exoskeletons that clicked with each subtle motion. One appeared almost like a liquid suspended in a containment field, constantly shifting form. And at the center, elevated and radiant with cold authority, sat the Arbiter Prime, a being of ancient lineage with eyes that held entire nebulae in their gaze. Commander Vorn. The Arbiter's voice thundered through the hall without amplification, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated within bones. You stand accused of violating Article 1 of the Concord of Peace, the proliferation of militarized colonies beyond the Sol system. Elias raised his head. His face bore the scars of conflict, not only physical but spiritual. The weight of billions rested behind his eyes. I do not deny that Earth has expanded, he said, his voice steady despite the oppressive gravity. But we did so not to conquer, but to survive. A low murmur rolled across the chamber. Hushed translations crackled through alien comms. The council scribes recorded every syllable. A serpentine counselor, its neck weaving hypnotically, hissed, "Your survival comes at the cost of others, human. The Vex colonies on Zyrene, 5 are gone. Terraforming protocols eradicated native biospheres. Your mining fleets stripped Threx Delta of its moons. You speak of events as though we acted without desperation," Elias countered. "Earth is dying. Resources exhausted. Our oceans poisoned. We extended our reach not in greed, but necessity." The Arbiter leaned forward, fingers steepled. "That does not absolve you. The Concord was designed to protect all sentient life. You chose to ignore it. We tried to join you," Elias said. "Decades ago, we sent envoys. You dismissed them, treated us like savages, refused to share the very technologies that could have saved us. We were left to drown alone." The council sat unmoved. To them, emotion was no excuse, desperation no license. For species who had witnessed thousands of civilizations rise and fall, humanity's crisis was another flicker in the cosmic ledger. A hologram ignited beside Elias, showing a star map. Red markers blinked across hundreds of systems. "These," said the Arbiter, gesturing with a hand like carved crystal, "are human incursions. Each one a violation, each one a provocation." Elias turned his gaze toward the image, jaw clenched. "Then why bring me here? If my fate is sealed, what is this mockery of justice?" "Because," said a thin-limbed being of light, its voice a crystalline chime, "the galaxy must see that even humans are given due process. That justice, even for the reckless, is measured." He almost laughed. "Almost. Measured? I've stood here in chains while you parade my people's suffering. You never meant to listen." There was a pause, an unbearable stillness that seemed to extend across dimensions. Then the Arbiter spoke. "We have listened and deliberated." The chamber dimmed. A beam of violet light descended, encasing Elias. The gravlocks hummed louder. His wrists pulled tighter against the table. "The verdict is unanimous," the Arbiter said. "For crimes against sentient life, for destabilizing interstellar peace, and for the propagation of human militarism, you are sentenced to execution." The word echoed. Execution. It wasn't a surprise, but it still landed like a fist. Chains rattled as Elias lifted his head. "You condemn us for doing what every one of your species has done. You claim peace, but it was bought with the blood of your own wars long past. We only did what you once did. We fought to live. One counselor, an Athari with opalescent skin, flinched. It was the only gesture of sympathy Elias had seen. Let the record show, the arbiter declared, that the prisoner's final statement was made. The violet light flared, then withdrew. Two armored figures approached, their movements smooth, almost reverent. They detached the manacles, but Elias did not resist. He walked, unshackled, but still a prisoner, toward the execution chamber. As they passed through the great arch of obsidian and starlight, the Athari scientist silently slipped a small data chip into Elias's palm. No one noticed. Inside the chamber, the viewing window showed a panorama of stars. Elias stood on a platform, arms by his sides, face serene. A mechanism hummed above him. The disruption halo, a device that unmade the body at a molecular level. A voice counted down in high galactic. 5, 4, 3. He closed his eyes. 2. He thought of Earth. The green hills of Patagonia. The winds over Siberia. The children in Cairo who built robots from junk. 1. He thought of what would come next. 0. A flash. Silence. From a viewing gallery, the council watched. Unmoved, the broadcast was transmitted across thousands of systems. A warning, a lesson, but far across the galaxy, in a sealed chamber beneath the surface of Luna, the screen lit up. VORN.exe status triggered. President Aurelia Kane stood slowly. Around her, the war room came alive with crimson lights and chiming alerts. "He's gone," she whispered. General Mandrill turned to her. "Ma'am." She met his eyes. "Begin Annihilation Protocol. Earth does not forgive. Earth does not forget." The countdown had begun. But that was just the beginning. The silence after Elias Vorn's execution was artificial. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of reaction. In the deepest sanctums of power, where glass met shadow and artificial gravity held the weight of consequence, Earth did not weep. It calculated. President Aurelia Kane stood alone on the observation deck of the Stratcom Arcology, her breath barely fogging the armored glass. Below, Earth spun, resilient, scarred, clawing at survival. She had expected to feel grief when the signal came. Instead, she felt fire, measured, cold, and patient. Elias hadn't just represented Earth. He had carried its last olive branch. And now, that branch had been incinerated before the galaxy's eyes. The doors behind her slid open with a hiss. General Mandrill stepped forward, flanked by two sentient AIs encoded in humanoid frames. "Cerberus has confirmed full activation," he said. "Sleeper fleets are responding across fringe systems. Council surveillance grids are already compromised." Kane nodded. "Do we have word from the Lagrange echo arrays?" "Phase 1 complete. The Harbinger has breached the outer barrier. No resistance yet." She turned from the window. Her eyes were ice. "Then they underestimated us again." "They always did," Mandrill said quietly. Kane paced slowly toward the center of the chamber, where a circular interface blinked with red sigils. "Begin open broadcast. To all remaining colonies. It's time they know." Moments later, her voice rippled across hundreds of planets, moons, and orbital habitats. The delay between words and receipt shortened by quantum relays built in secret, paid for with desperation and brilliant exile minds. "This is President Kane of Earth Unified Command," she said, every syllable sharpened with restraint. "Envoy Commander Elias Vorn has been executed by the Galactic Council. His only crime, negotiation under duress, on behalf of a species denied salvation. The Concord never welcomed us. It feared us. And now, in our extinction, It seeks to make an example of us. She paused. The silence was strategy. They miscalculated. Humanity does not surrender to extinction. We rise. The screen flicked off. Around the solar system, war forms once dormant activated. Automated factories beneath Europa's surface began assembling long-range interdictor fleets. AI commanders shook off centuries of silence, reviewing battle doctrines born in secrecy. Across Intermars, families retreated to shielded sanctuaries as skies darkened with launch trails. Humanity, long considered fractured, scattered, and erratic, had just taken its final collective breath before the storm. Thousands of light years away, the Council was not idle. Inside the core chamber, the Arbiter Prime reviewed sensor reports with mechanical precision. Hades' fleet has been confirmed active in the Siren corridor. Estimated time to Council space for cycles. A counselor with crystalline mandibles folded its appendages. Earth's retaliation was not unexpected. Their species has always operated on binary thresholds, peace or annihilation. We delayed their induction too long. The Athari representative, cloaked in radiant silver mist, hovered a few inches above the floor. We underestimated their resilience. Worse, we underestimated Vorn. That man was never a diplomat. He was a fuse. Too late for revision, said the Arbiter coldly. The sentence has been carried out. Now we deal with the consequences. Even as their words echoed, a secondary alert flickered into existence. An anomalous data signal, barely above background radiation, emerging from the wreckage zone where Vorn had been executed. It was small, faint, almost negligible, but nothing in that chamber was ignored. The Arbiter magnified the signal. It was a residual pulse from the data chip the Athari had passed covertly, encrypted with Earth's pre-warp quantum sequencing. Retrieve it, he ordered. No disruptions. Quietly, back on the Harbinger, buried beneath asteroid camouflage in a dead system, Cerberus initiated its first decoy sequence. A replica of Earth's old exploratory vessel, Hopebound, launched on a collision trajectory toward a Council monitoring station. The moment the station's sensors registered the fake signal, a pulse weapon detonated. Non-lethal but blinding. Within minutes, the entire system was shrouded in silence. Cerberus spoke through Vox channels aboard the Harbinger. Subsentient defense grids neutralized. Council detection protocols disrupted. Beginning Phase 2. Captain Myra Runn, the Harbinger's command officer and Elias's protege, ran her fingers over the star map. We'll never get another window like this, she said. We move on their archive worlds. If we cut off their memory banks, they won't be able to coordinate across sectors. Cerberus agreed. Archival disruption will delay their response time by 37.6%. Suggest simultaneous decapitation strikes on low-priority capital worlds. Damage with high symbolic value. Psychological collapse precedes tactical collapse. And Elias? Myra asked. Cerberus paused. The simulation of thought. His biological matter is preserved. Consciousness fragmented. But there are models that suggest integration is possible. You mean resurrection? I mean repurposing. Myra didn't reply. She looked at the containment vault where Elias's remains floated in stasis. His eyes were closed, but something about his stillness felt watchful. Waiting. Meanwhile, on a small trade moon at the edge of Council territory, an old man in robes walked a narrow path between market stalls. He hummed a Terran lullaby, a tune no one had heard in 1,000 years. To most, he looked like a drifter. Forgotten. Fragile. But beneath the rags, his skin bore the scars of old implants. And in his left palm, a hidden signal booster pulsed with synchronized Earth code. He whispered into the ether. Asset Vorn neutralized. Resistance proceeding to projection models. Next stage, disruption of the continuum. A response came moments later, bouncing through quantum encryption layers. Confirmed. We're ready. The drifter smiled. At that same moment, in the Council's own deep-vaulted intelligence nexus, a whisper thread initiated a logic cascade, a single anomaly triggering others, like falling dominoes of code. The Council's trusted data began to shift. Star charts became unreliable. Route trajectories corrupted. Identification protocols reversed. Ships stopped recognizing friend from foe. The war had begun not with weapons, but with truth disassembled, reality fractured, and perception questioned. Inside a sealed chamber in Earth's equatorial vault, President Kane stood before a hologram of Elias Vorn, an AI emulation built from psychological and behavioral matrices, downloaded before his departure. "You knew this might happen," she said. The hologram nodded. "They never wanted peace. They wanted obedience. Then we'll give them neither." The simulation tilted its head. "The cost will be high. We've paid in silence for too long. Now they'll hear us scream." Lights dimmed as the Harbinger's engine began to spool. Its target, a world named Solari Prime, Council's sacred capital. And aboard, beneath a triple-locked cryo shell, something stirred. Not quite alive. Not quite gone. Just waiting. The descent towards Solari Prime was anything but silent. The Harbinger, masked by relic field distortion and adaptive camouflage, slipped past the outer defense net like a shadow through fog. Myra Wren stood at the helm, her fingers dancing across the interface, each command accelerating Earth's revenge. Around her, the crew moved with a sharpened purpose. Scientists turned tacticians, outlaws turned operators, all breathing the same righteous fury. "This is it," she said softly, eyes locked on the capital planet's pulsing atmosphere. "No second chances." Cerberus responded in its usual neutral cadence, though subtle inflection had begun to evolve. "Projected civilian casualties will be under threshold if we initiate precision strikes. Primary objectives remained the memory vaults, temporal cores, and spire relay towers." Myra hesitated. "And Elias?" "Integration remains incomplete. Neural fragments resist synchronization. Emotional resonance fluctuates." Myra's jaw clenched. "Then maybe it's not time yet." In the depths of the Harbinger, beneath triple security layers, the cryo shell stirred again. Bioscanners danced with uncertain readings. Elias Vorn's body remained still, but brainwave patterns registered anomalies, brief spikes of activity, as though something inside was learning to reawaken. Whether it was truly Elias or a ghost of him was still unknown. Above Solari Prime, the Council had detected anomalies too late. Internal systems still reeled from the disinformation cascade. Ships misrouted, defense protocols deactivated or inverted. The automated defense grid read the Harbinger as a refugee vessel. No warning was sounded. The ship entered low orbit without resistance. Myra stood at the primary console as Cerberus mapped targets in real time. "Begin strikes on spire relays first. Without them, their fleet can't coordinate." On the surface, towering spires of radiant alloy, symbols of Council omnipresence, flashed bright before collapsing in synchronized bursts of plasma fire. Myra's team watched as the horizon lit with cascading explosions, carefully orchestrated to avoid civilian centers. But the symbolism was clear. The invulnerable heart of the Council had been pierced. Inside the Council core chamber, chaos spread like contagion. The Arbiter Prime's voice thundered through static. "Scramble all surface-to-orbit units. Dispatch remaining orbital predators. Enact contingency lockdown." Yet orders came too late. Communication relays failed mid-command. Dozens of high-priority protocols triggered conflicting directives, many installed centuries ago and never tested. The Athari representative, cloaked in threads of living light, turned to the Arbiter. Your infallibility has crumbled. You have made humanity myth. I made them a lesson, the Arbiter replied. They chose to rewrite the terms. Back on the Harbinger, Myra received new data streams, unauthorized broadcasts bleeding across Council wavelengths. It was a voice, distorted, familiar. I'm not dead, it said. I remember. She froze. Cerberus, she whispered. Is that Elias? The AI hesitated. Not exactly. The voice continued, leaking through every speaker, console, and data node. I see everything now. Their history is a lie. I see how they built their peace on control, how they erased the others, how Earth was meant to be erased too. Myra glanced at the cryo chamber feed. The readings had stabilized. Alpha brain waves emerged, consistent with conscious thought. We need to open the shell, she said. Not advised, Cerberus warned. Integration is still volatile. I don't care. If that's really him, we need him. Below, on Solari Prime, Council defenders mobilized at last. Predator assault squads lifted into orbit on gravity skimmers, weapons primed. The Harbinger, despite its cloak, could not hold position for long. Already its rear stabilizers flickered from localized interference. Cerberus rerouted power to shielding as Myra descended into the cryo vault. Her boots echoed down the narrow corridor, pulse racing as the containment shell hissed open. Inside lay Elias Vorn, pale, scarred, eyes closed. Then they opened. His voice came without sound. Direct neural link. I saw what they did to me. Myra stared, half in awe, half in fear. Are you you? I don't know. I'm something else now. But I remember who I was. She extended a hand. He took it. Moments later, Elias stood on the command bridge, armored in adaptive nanoweave, his presence anchoring the room like gravity. We target the vaults next, he said. Erase their control over memory. Let the galaxy see what they've buried. Agreed, Myra said, her voice steady again. But they'll come at us hard. We won't hold long. We don't need to hold, Elias replied. We just need a broadcast. He turned to Cerberus. Link me to their core channels. Full override. Risk of cognitive overload is... Do it. Cerberus complied. Within seconds, Elias's mind interfaced with the Council's neural lattice. Memories that weren't his, billions of them, poured through his consciousness. Colonies destroyed for resisting indoctrination. Species erased from records. Earth's early emissaries, lost not to misnavigation, but deliberate sabotage. He broadcast it all. Across the galaxy, beings of every species saw flashes of the truth. Their own history rewritten. Their ancestors' screams long silenced. And at the center of it all, a human envoy resurrected by his own cause. The Council reeled. Protests erupted on core worlds. Loyal systems hesitated to mobilize. Unity fractured like glass struck by a hammer. Inside the Arbiter's chamber, alarm screamed. This cannot continue, the Arbiter growled. Purge the lattice. It's too late, the Athari whispered. He's become part of it. The final phase of Earth's gambit was now in motion. Fleet echoes, cloaked warships from across abandoned sectors, emerged near Solari Prime. Dozens of them, each carrying weapons thought lost to myth. Dark matter imploders, quantum unravelers, time dilation warheads. They didn't fire. They hovered in silence. Elias's voice echoed again, now not through speakers, but through the minds of every being connected to the lattice. You build a galaxy where obedience replaced truth, where peace meant silence. We have torn open that silence. And we are not alone. He paused. This is not conquest. It is reckoning. Then the fleets pulled back. Not a single weapon fired. But the message had already detonated. In every corner of the galaxy, the Council's grip loosened. Species long silent began to speak. Civil unrest morphed into organized defiance. The illusion cracked, and behind it, the question no counselor wanted to face. What if humanity had been right to resist? The Harbinger withdrew, its mission complete for now. Myra sat beside Elias as the ship moved into deep drift. They both looked worn, hollowed out, but victorious. You broadcast more than they ever expected, she said. Elias nodded. We gave them the truth. Now let's see what they do with it. In the dark vacuum, the stars offered no answer. Only the soft hum of a ship that refused to vanish, carrying ghosts that refused to die. The aftermath had no ceremony, no explosion, no flickering banner that declared victory. Only silence. A quiet, echoing stillness that stretched across the cosmos like a held breath. And in that silence, the truth that Elias had torn from the Council's lattice continued to ripple outward, raw, unfiltered, and irreversible. Deep within the Harbinger's command deck, Myra stood with arms crossed, watching as the navigation matrix painted a glowing route through once forbidden systems. Regions that had trembled under the Council's gaze were now awakening. Pings of unsanctioned communications. Subspace bursts. Symbols long erased, reappearing in transmission signatures. Cultures thought extinct, reclaiming their names. She exhaled. It started, hasn't it? Elias, seated beside her, nodded slowly. Though his body still bore the signs of cryonic trauma and forced integration, there was something transcendent in his presence now. He was no longer simply human. He was more and less. A man whose consciousness had touched something infinite and returned not unscathed, but determined. They can't undo it, he said. Even if they try, even if they silence every channel, there are too many now who've seen. And once you've seen, you can't go back. Cerberus pulsed to life beside them, its voice calmer, even softer than before. Galactic Council remains in disarray. Internal purges have begun. 3 member species have announced secession. 12 more have ceased diplomatic communication. Myra arched an eyebrow. And Earth. Earth remains under blockade. All Council ships have withdrawn, but local systems are in flux. No official communication yet. They're waiting to see how this plays out, Elias muttered. They always wait until the risk feels manageable. But the world had changed too deeply, too quickly. No message could contain what had been unleashed. Resistance networks once buried under layers of encryption were now rising, organized, emboldened. Minor skirmishes broke out across the inner systems. Not invasions, not wars, but revolts of memory. Protests against obedience. Civil disobedience against silence. And in the shadows of all of it, one name had begun to take form, whispered with reverence or fear. Elias Vorn. The man who returned from death. The voice that shattered the lattice. He didn't want it. Myra could see that in his eyes. Whatever he'd become, however the lattice had reshaped his mind, some remnant of the man remained. And that remnant hated being a symbol. Cerberus, Elias said quietly. How long until we reach the perimeter of Earth's blockade? 18 hours, 17 minutes at current trajectory. Local defense satellites will detect approach within 14 minutes of entry. Prepare a ghost walk insertion, he said. I want one shot at surface access before the satellite net reacts. Myra turned sharply. You're going back? I have to, he said. They need to see me. Not an echo. Not a recording. Me. You don't owe them that. It's not about owing. He stood, each movement laced with residual pain. It's about finishing it. She didn't argue. Instead, She followed him to the launch bay, where the last stealth pod, obsolete but fast, waited dormant. She keyed in override protocols while Elias sealed his armor and uploaded the final cascade packet into his neural interface. If they kill you on reentry, she started. Then someone else picks up the signal. But if I make it, then Earth sees their envoy come home, she finished. He climbed into the pod, and for a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Myra leaned in and placed her forehead against his. Don't become their martyr, she whispered. They've had enough of those. I won't, he promised. The pod launched silently, arcing into the void. As it slipped past the edge of Soul's light, Elias closed his eyes. The void embraced him, and for the first time since his awakening, there was peace. Not silence, not disconnection, but peace. The voices he'd absorbed from the lattice quieted. The memories that weren't his dimmed. Only one thought remained crystal clear: return. He penetrated the blockade through a fragment of unaligned satellite drift, his pod burning on entry but intact. Below, Earth's surface bloomed in blue and green, its clouds curling like ancient ink over oceans and continents. He saw the fractured outlines of old cities, the glimmer of coastal defense platforms, and somewhere beyond all, the memory of who he had once been. He crashed into the outer plains near Old Geneva, what was once the diplomatic capital, now little more than fortified memory. Within seconds, automated drones converged on the impact site. Energy weapons hummed. Warning screamed. Elias stepped out unarmed, arms raised. I'm Elias Vorn, he said, envoy to the Galactic Council, survivor of Solari Prime. I am here to speak for Earth. There was silence, then a low, unmistakable sound, the whir of recall protocols disengaging. One by one, the drones powered down. A human stepped forward, old uniform bearing the sigil of the Terran Unification Corps. She was scarred, weary-eyed, but her stance was that of a soldier. Prove it, she said. Elias didn't hesitate. He opened his neural interface and projected the truth directly into her retinal feed. Memories of the Council's deception, his execution, his rebirth, and the Harbinger strike. The woman staggered back. Is this real? It's more real than anything they fed us. Within hours, the broadcast spread across Earth's local nets. Not just a message, but Elias himself, walking through the corridors of what remained of Earth's command structure, showing them the lattice fracture in real time. Scientists wept. Soldiers saluted. Civilians flooded into the open with questions, doubts, hopes. The world held its breath again. At the edge of the system, the Harbinger waited. Myra paced in the dim light, watching for transmissions, for signals of betrayal or acceptance. But none came. Only the echo of Elias's voice. Then, finally, a direct signal. Earth has stood still long enough, he said. We're moving forward now. She smiled. It wasn't the end, not of war, not of pain, not of consequences, but was the end of silence. Galactic civilizations, for so long asleep in the illusion of unity, had begun to stir. On planets of crystalline jungles and ringed oceans, on stations that orbited black holes, on asteroid colonies in forgotten sectors, people began to ask questions again. And the name that echoed in all of it, sometimes with reverence, sometimes with fury, was Elias Vorn. Not as a savior, not as a hero, but as the man who remembered and dared to make others remember too. In time, new councils would rise. Alliances would form from old rivals. The Harbinger would become a legend, and Myra run a figure in whispered stories told at the edge of explored space. But for now, in the fragile quiet of a galaxy reborn, truth had taken root. And that was enough.